So what I want you to see is just kind of the process by which I go through to create a program. I'm going to show you right now. I did the disk transport, and I looked at the assignment here, and it's showing me that level 1 you just get a couple disks, level 2 you get I think 4, and level 3 you get all but one of each, and you hide one of each behind the castle. If you can hide one of each behind the castle, then, or if you can put them in the correct box, then you can definitely hide them behind the castle. So I'm going to ignore that. I'm not going to do the hide the thing behind the castle. We could easily do that once you've been able to master what I'm going to do here. This is what I came up with, and you can see it's a lot less lines of code, a lot less. And it gets all the disks. It takes some time, and you're going to see there's some unnecessary movements in there. Like, for instance, when it gets a red disk, it'll come down here and turn a second time. It doesn't need to, but it does for the blue or the green. I want to get my robot in a good position to begin with. And I also want to set the speed, and I also am going to need to set some variables. And so I'm going to use the my blocks, and I'm going to create one called startup. I don't need to put anything else in there, just startup. And then when started, startup. This is just going to help me keep a little bit more organized and keep things a little bit more neat and tidy. So when my program starts, it's going to run whatever's in startup and then continue down. So I want to set the drive velocity to 100% and the turn velocity to 100%. And then I'm going to set some global variables. I do want to have some variables that I'm going to use, one of which is going to be the disk locations. Now, we haven't used a 2D list before, but I'm going to make a 2D list. Each disk has two pieces of information about where it is. Its position on the x-axis and its position on the y-axis. And so I need those two pieces of information. If it was 3D, like it was somewhere in space, then I'd need 3. I'd need a height, width, and depth. But right now, all I need is its X and Y locations. So I'm going to make a 2D list. I know that the 6 disks on the right are mirrored from the 6 disks on the left. And so I really only need the 6 locations, because those 6 locations, I can then modify those simply by doing some math to mirror their locations, the x-axis locations of the other ones. And the y-axis locations will be exactly the same. And then set disk locations to, and then boom. So now I can get the locations of all 6 of those disks. All right, so I'm going to need that information. I really want to start the robot in some place that is better. So let's say start at 700. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. Yeah, 700 is going to be a good spot to start in. So I'm going to call this my starting location. So every time it starts up, it's going to set these velocities. It's going to put the robot in the starting position right there. And now I'm good to go. And actually that even could be my starting position. I'll put that right there. So I'm starting there. So the first thing I want to do for retrieving a disk is to go get the disk. But how do I know how far to go? Well, I want to position the robot on the x-axis first. I could position the robot on the y-axis, this up and down first. But the problem with that is that when I want to go get these over here, say I'd drive forward and I'd hit the castle thing. And I don't want to hit the castle thing. I need to get around it. So I'm always going to find the x-axis first. I'm already past this gate, so I should be out of the way of this gate. So I either am going to go to the right from our viewpoint, or I'm going to go to the right or to the left, or from the robot's viewpoint, forward or backward. Okay, So if I'm on the x-axis right now at 0, and I want to go over here, then I'm going to find an x-axis of negative something or other. And on this side, it's a positive something or other. So on this side, it's I'm already in the correct y of negative 100. So my first disk, x is going to be, and you notice where my little magnetic pickup thing is, it's right around 100, it's right around half. I'm going to call it half because I'm going to have it turn its magnet on first. And so it'll go right past the disk to pick it up. So right now the magnet is probably at x, we'll say 100. And I won't need it to go to x 300. So my first location is going to be 300 for the x value, and the y value negative 100. So first I'm going to find the x value, and then I want to turn the robot left. All right, now when I drive forward, forward just means it's a positive number on the drive. Like the motors are spinning forward. And if I spin forward for a positive 200, it's going to go forward. And if I spin forward for a negative 200, it goes backwards. So that actually is going to be really helpful for us because I can tell it to go the amount difference between where it is and where I want it to be. All right. Where it is right now, I can use in sensing. I can say the position X in millimeters. The current position X in millimeters is 0, but I need it to go to the 300, right? So if I said 0 minus 300, I would get negative 300. But if I said 300 minus 0, I'd get positive 300. So I need to make sure I'm doing it in the correct order. So I'm going to grab one of these operators, and I'm going to say that I want wherever I need to go, which is the 300, minus where I'm at now, which is 0. Okay, so now I know that that first one is 300. Here. I know that that first location that I need to go is 300. And so I could just type it in here. I could just type in 300. And we could just check that. Let's try it. My head is blocking it. There we go. All right, so it went to the correct first location. Perfect. And if I wanted it to go to the negative 300, let's make sure that that works. Yep, it goes backwards. Now I'm gonna have to do something for the left side because the magnet is further forward on the robot. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of additional math when I'm ready to get the stuff on the left. But I'm gonna start out by getting the stuff on the right. Now, because I want this to repeat over and over and over again, I'm gonna want that value right there. I'm gonna need that value to change every time. And I'm gonna be able to do that by telling, every time it repeats, telling it to switch to a different item in this array over here. That's the variable that holds those multiple values. I am not classically trained in programming. So if I say something, if you're a programmer and I say the wrong definition or term, please just let me know and I'll be happy to correct myself. But I'm pretty sure that they're calling this a 2D list when really it's an array. It has rows and columns. And so you can call the information that is in the array by specifying the row and the column number of the data that you want. And so down here under variables, I'm going to say I want for that 300 really, I want item 1, 1. So the first one is the row and the second one is the column. So row 1, item 1 is that 300. So item 1 of item 1 of disk locations minus position X. So now when I try this, it should do the exact same thing, but it's using the value in my array now. So if I were to, for instance, change that to -300 like I did earlier, it should go back to the left side, and it does. Okay, so I'm going to leave that back at 100. So really I'm just working on my first iteration, the first time it's going to go through and grab a disk. That's what I'm working on right now. So this is where I'm left, right there. I know I want to turn on the magnet before I get there. So actually I'll turn the magnet on right before that. So energize, and then I'm going to turn left. Now, the thing about it is if I want to turn left and then I want to go forward, this is going to seem a little bit strange, but I have to add this because if I were to get any of these that were further up on the y-axis, I'm only positioned based on the x. I also need to position based on the y. So I'll need to turn and then go forward. So I'm going to say turn left 90 degrees. And then I'm going to do this exact same drive forward thing. So I'm going to copy it. But I'm going to change it to, instead of X, I'm going to change it to the Y. And right here, I need to use the Y value, which is that -100. So it's going to be column 2. So item 1, column 2 is the -100. So when I run this, nothing should happen. It shouldn't hit that because it's going to already be at -100. So -100 minus -100 is 0. So that's why it's moving for 0 distance. Once it gets its item, so let's say it did drive forward, now it's going to need to come back. So I need to make a left turn, but what if it's up here? I'm going to have it come back to this location on the y-axis and then go back to that location on the x-axis. That's how we're going to get it back. So that's how it's going to come back. This position is not going to change as it goes. No matter what disk it picks up, I always want it to come back to that -100. So -100. Let's refresh and try it again. And since I'm going to get those disks that are in the so maybe I don't need to reverse. This is just some trial and error here. Because if I'm going positive, yeah, I don't need to change the reverse because the math is doing that for me. Whether it goes forward or reverse just depends upon the number that it's calculating. So the -100 minus whatever will give me a positive or negative, which will tell the robot whether it needs to go forward or reverse. I just leave the drive position as forward, and that's fine. And then, okay, so now I need to turn right and then back up. So turn right for 90, and then I'm going to do, again, this kind of thing right here. But then I'm going to adjust my x-axis. And I want my x-axis to go back to 0. So we're just focusing on this first part, so where it goes and gets every disk and then comes back to this spot right here. I'm going to repeat this 6 times, right? But how do I tell it each time it goes through the repeat to change whatever item it's on? Because it's going to start on 300 and actually might change that to what was it, negative. The x was, the x was still 300, and then this was -100. And then let's do 300 and 500. So we'll just do this, repeat it twice, All right. But the first time it's going to go through, it's going to do this one. And the second time it's going to go through and it's going to do this one. So the only thing that's changing when I go through that the second time is I want to change this to a 2 and that to a 2. Right? So I'm going to go forward based on the information in the second item of my array. So that needs to be a 2 and that needs to be a 2. Well, when I have stuff that's repeating and I'm changing something, I'm going to grab myself a variable. And I'm just going to call it list item. And I'm going to set list item number in my startup. So whenever it starts up, I'm going to change my variables. All right, so now it's starting as 1. So I'm going to grab list item num and put it there, which is, it's set as 1 right now. List item num 1. I'll just change this to repeat once, just so we can test it. Let's step through it just so we understand. This is a really cool tool. You push the step button in the upper right instead of play. I don't know if you can see it on my screen. It's just to the right of the playground. So it's running through the startup stuff. Okay, there we go. It's still on the startup. All right, here we go. Now it's going to do this repeat. So step, it's going to drive forward 4. There it goes. It's going to energize the magnet. Got it. Then it's going to turn left. And then it's going to drive forward for 0 because it's doing that math there and saying negative 100. That's from this item over here. Negative 100 minus negative 100 that we're at. That would be 0. So it's going to drive forward for 0, which it did. And then it's going to drive forward to go back to the negative 100 position on the y-axis, which it's already there. So it does nothing. And then it's going to turn right. Boom. Goes back to where it was. And then drives, quote unquote, forward to the 0 position on the x-axis. There it goes. Boom. All right, let's go to do 2 repetitions. If I do this, it's just going to do the exact same thing twice. But I want it to change. So after the first time, I want it to change the list item number by 1, which means it's just going to add a 1 to it. So now it's going to be item 2.1 and item 2.2, which are down here. It is working. So now I got to put in the locations of the other 4 items. So the other 4 items, this is going to be nice because they're all on the same x-axis. I think this is going to be a positive 100, and then a positive 300, and then a positive 500, and then we're going to repeat this 6 times. This is just, we're just going all, go big or go home. Here we go. Once that runs, we need it to put the disk where it goes and then return right here. So it's ready to go that next loop again. So that's a function, really. I'm just gonna, because every time it gets here, where it is right now, I'm gonna say, what color do you have? And then based on the color that you have, I want you to go to this location and drop it off. All right. I want it to identify what color it is. So sometimes I'm going to have multiple turns where I maybe don't need them. Turn left. All right, so I'm going to have it basically like go backwards. All right, then I want it to come down this spot. So I'm going to say drive reverse for, let's say 400. My blocks, put disk location. So I don't really need this yet. I didn't really need to do this yet, but you'll see what I'm going to do in a little bit. And then turn, yeah, and then go there. Okay, cool. So I'm always going to be there, and then I'm going to say, what color is it? If it's red, I'm just going to go straight back, right? But if it's green or blue, then I'm going to need to do some turns and, you know, probably a couple turns. All right. So if it's green, which we know it is going to be green, I'm going to want it to turn on its, let's say turn right. Again, I always need it to turn right. Oh, turn right for 90. Because now I want it to find its location on the x-axis. The x-axis is really what is different. The y is always going to be the same. The x-axis is going to be negative 800 for blue, 0 for red, and positive 800 for green. And I know that just because I figured it out already. So if I bring the drive forward, so let's just back up for a second and say that I'm going to turn right or left for 90, go, you know, reverse, and then turn right for 90, and then I'm going to drive forward, doesn't matter, whatever you want to call it, for 0 if it's red, for negative 800 if it's blue, or for positive 800 if it's green. Right, so positive 800 for green, and then I'm going to turn right for 90. I'm going to drive forward for, say, I don't know, let's say 300. I'm going to demagnetize, because then that's going to drop it, and then I'm going to reverse for 300. And then no matter where I'm at, I need to go back to 0 on the x-axis, which that's what this does right here. So I can copy and paste that one. All right. So drive reverse, and then I think I need to turn. I turned right, so then I need to turn left to go back the way I was. And then there. Let's try that. Nice. So that's what it does if it's green, but I need to get it back to its position that it was in up here, where I want it to start. So refresh, because this right there is my starting position. If I make sure it goes back to there, then when it gets back up to the beginning of the loop, where it goes to get its second disc, or the next disc, then it will be in the right position. The robot will be where it's supposed to be at that time. Turn left for 90 degrees, and then go forward to Y is at negative 100. I didn't really have to do it this way. I could know just the exact value, but it's easier if I know the coordinates. I don't need to worry about where the robot is at this moment in time. And then if I change something later, like maybe I have it drive a little bit higher up here, or actually have it drive into the square or something like that, then going back to its starting position will always be the same. See, it's not relative, that's a fixed position. All right, and then turn right for 90 degrees. All right, so I should get the green one, put it in the green spot, and then go right back to yep, there you go. And I'm ready to do the next one. Now what I need to do is, it depends upon the color of where it puts it depends on the color. So again, I'm gonna get a variable. All right, I'm gonna make a variable, and I'm gonna call it disk color location. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. Color location. I like to put variables up here and set their values. Change color location to, I'm going to start it by default at 0. And then the variable I said color location right here. Boom. Okay. So right now it'd be going to red. But I want to change the value of that based on the color. So we'll say front eye detects blue. Whatever, red is fine. We're gonna need 3 of these anyway. So, and then we're going to, if it detects red, I need to set color location to 0. That's it right there. Control C, V, V. And then I've got all 3. So if it's red, change it to 0. If it is green, change it to positive 800. And if it is blue, change it to negative 800. This is always going to be the same every single time. So I don't need to change that at all. This is like my startup routine. So I'm just going to put in the values, which I actually already have all the values. So I'm good there. So yeah. I can get all 6 done right now. We've been streaming for less than an hour, I think. All right, so I'm going to replace. I'm going to do control. I'm going to do repeat. Repeat. I don't need to repeat the startup every time. Just that. So I'll do 6 times there because I can't do all 12 yet because I need to do some math to manipulate the item numbers first. So let's go. Let's see what happens. What I did. Oh, what happened? No. Oh, haha. We forgot. I forgot to put back the variable. Change the variable. That's why I went to the same location the second time. Change color location. List item number by 1. And there we go. Now we're ready to do that whole thing again with one thing different. All the X values are negative, or all the X values are mirrored, so times negative. I did it like pairs. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. Right, so I'm gonna run this twice. Instead of changing the list item, I'm going to do some multiplication. And I'm going to set, or I'm going to change the value of, so replace item 1, 1 of disk location to item. And actually, we're going to use the list item thing. List item. I'm going to need to explain this. So this is just going to do two items. It should grab this one here and this one here. It'll take those values for item 1. 1, 1 is 300 and 1, 2 is negative 100. So remember, it's going to take those values. So we'll step through it. It's doing that startup. Okay, and then there we go. Okay, now it's ready for this first repeat, the first loop of the repeat. It's going to drive forward for whatever item 1 is, so 300. Okay, so it does that. Then it's going to turn the magnet on, and it's going to turn left for 90. Then it's going to go forward to get its Y axis. It doesn't need to in this case. It's going to turn right. All right. It's going to drive forward for whatever to get back. Okay, it does. And now it's going to run through that whole finding the right color box to put it in. All right, and then it's going to go back to its, what we said as a starting position. Okay. Now you'll notice that it's green here, because right now it's going to take whatever is list item 1 is 1. So it's 1 of the disk location of disk locations array. So list item 1 of disk locations array, and it's going to change it to whatever that is now times -1. So this 300 right here is going to turn into -300, and then it's going to run it again. So let's try that and see what happens. So we're going to click next step. There we go, and it goes backwards. One thing I'm noticing is it's not going to go backwards enough. Right? So it doesn't go backwards enough to get that disk. So I could multiply by -1 point something, but I really just want to add about, I think, 100, maybe a little less, but we'll see. About 100 millimeters to it. So I'm going to grab this guy right here. And so whatever it turns out, if I add negative, so I want to do the addition first before I do the multiplication. So I'll take this little positive guy right here. So whatever that location is, plus, let's do 100 times -1. Oop, hey, come back here. And then, hey, right there. All right, let's refresh that and see what happens. Not the best, but it might work. One way we'll find out is when we do the next one. Okay, so it's ready for the next repeat. So this time I want it to deal with the second item in the list. So this is going to be a repeat. This is the repeat for 6 times. Each time it does 2, then I want it to add 1 to the item. Change item, list item number by 1. There we go. All right, let's give it a shot. I should have it do some kind of victory. What? What happened? No! Oh! Missed the 1? Why did it miss it? Is it because... Okay. Alright, I'm going to change this to 25. Last one. Yes! Yeehaw! It's going to put it in its correct spot. They're all in their correct spots. Everything's good. There we go.